training?
In Lackland Air Force Base in Texas.
Parris Island, South Carolina.
I was living in Minnesota at the time, where I'm from originally, and lived there while I was in the service. They sent us to Fort Leonard Wood Camp Chaffee, Arkansas. That's where I took my first 8 weeks of basic training. From there, I went to Fort Carson, Colorado for my advanced training, 8 weeks in each location.
My basic training was very close to here, was actually at Fort Dix, New Jersey. I was from New York State, but I guess this was the closest basic training center, so we went to Fort Dix.
That was interesting because most of the people that I signed up with were transferred out west or either south to the basic training units there. However, I was lucky enough to be stationed at Fort Dix, which wasn't that far from home. And that way my parents could come and visit me, and I could go if I had a 3-day pass.
Okay. Where was your basic training?
I was at Parris Island,
Where is that?
South Carolina. Parris Island, South Carolina. Everybody east of the Mississippi goes to Parris Island. If you're west of the Mississippi, any state west of Mississippi, you go to San Diego.
Fort Devens, Massachusetts.
Because I went through ROTC, I went to basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky in 1971 for 6 weeks. And then the next year I did another 6 weeks at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania.
Fort Lewis, Washington.
It was an experience. As a matter of fact, since leaving the military, I went to college on the GI Bill, and I joined a fraternity. And it was easy for me because basic training was just like going through an eternity. You know, you had Hell Week and everything else. However, it was an experience that anybody that's joined the military goes to, they'll remember the rest of their lives. I went, after basic training, I went to San Antonio, Texas, and then from there, went home for 30 days, caught a plane to Philadelphia, and I wasn't home for the next 2 years. They just flew me right over to Korea.
Basic training is, it's a process designed to bring you as an individual into a team, the Army team. So everything that you do is not on an individual basis, but it's on a team basis. So you get up in the morning, you have to make your bed in the military fashion. Then you want to make sure that your other teammates in your area have done the same thing, so no one is out of step. You have to clean the floors, clean the latrines, shave, shower, and shine yourself. You have PT in the morning where you're running a number of miles and doing exercises. You have breakfast, and then you're out on training, always either marching there or running there. Occasionally we were trucked somewhere that was really far away, but if it was within a couple of miles, we had to march to it. There was a lot of drill on how to march, standing at attention at ease, using arms. So all those things were taught us so that we knew individually the items that we would need to know to maintain ourselves in the military, as well as to bring us together as a team and function as a team.
Well, I'll tell you, it was cold up there, let me tell you. And I didn't know, we didn't go to Fort Dix for basic training. They sent us up there, we were going to be ski troopers. If I had been a ski trooper, I wouldn't be here today over in Korea. And I'll tell you one thing about Korea. It snows every day. No matter 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or an hour, it snows. Because one time we were up on a mountain, and it was 50 below zero. Actually, they checked it. It was 50 below. And it was so cold, one of the guns got jammed, the shell got they couldn't use it. So if you're ever going to Korea, make sure you have good heavy clothes on.
Very difficult, but very
very well formed. Everything they did was for a purpose. And the drill instructor that we had was very good. And we wondered why he wasn't really, giving us all a very hard time, because he went with us to Korea, that's why.
It wasn't bad at all. It was really easy. I was only there for about 28 days in basic training, and I finished the rest of my duties in Cheyenne, Wyoming Supply School.
It was good. You got used to it fairly quickly. Everybody fell in line. They took away a lot of your individualism and made you part of a group, part of a unit. Everybody got close haircuts. Everybody worked together, keeping the barracks clean, and going through physical training, weapons training as a unit. So it was a little difficult when you're scrubbing your barracks floor in the middle of the night a couple times, but on the other hand, you got to fire all the weapons. I was a hunter, but before I went in, I had fired shotguns and stuff, so it wasn't new to me, but here you got rifles, machine guns, mortars, rifle grenades, BARs, all kinds of weapons that you got accomplished with and familiar with. So it was a little strenuous, but it was not too bad.
How did you get to?
Different. It was a couple months of, training in the Army, and kind of enjoyed it. I was young, just kind of like you, and it taught me a lot of things. I joined the Army in New Jersey. I made a mistake. I signed up in Philadelphia, which sent me to Kentucky. I couldn't go on the East Coast, and they shipped me to Washington for basic training. And I thought it was a city. I didn't know there was a state out west. So after 5 days on the train, we used to train with the 2nd Infantry Division, who ended up in the 2nd Division and had a lot of casualties.
Well, it was rather long. It was broken down into 2 segments. First 8 weeks was basically getting you into condition, doing a lot of marching, a lot of physical fitness programs. You did go to the rifle range, and we did spend a week in camping out in your pup tents. Then you got a week off in between that and the second 8 weeks. And then the second 8 weeks, you did more of the military type things, weapon work, hand grenade things, learning how to take on or put on and take off a gas mask if there was a gas attack, and working with various weapons, mostly rifles, carbines, and pistols. Again, a lot of physical fitness though, and a lot of marching.
Describe what basic training was like.
Basic training, a lot of calisthenics. You wondered why you were there. You wonder if you get through that brutal stuff. Basic training. What I try to tell some Marines that I tutor today and mentor is just say to yourself, is that all you want? When the DI says, give me 20, just say to yourself, is that all you want? And you can get through it and maybe do those 20.
All right. How did you get to Korea?
The Air Force sent me by plane out of Travis Air Force Base, California. We refueled in Hawaii. You ever hear of Wake Island? We refueled in Wake Island. And then we went to Tachikawa Air Base, Japan. And then from Japan to Osan Air Base, Korea. And from Osan, they sent me north to Kimpo Air Force Base, which was near the capital of Seoul.
It was the middle of December, and they sent us to Fort Lewis, Washington. And when we got there, many of us thought perhaps we'd get leave to go home for the holidays before departing the country for 16 months. That was not the case. Now this was 1955. I did not serve during the combat. I got there 2 years later. But on Christmas Eve morning, we walked up the gangplank and boarded that troop ship. And left that afternoon. Our first full day at sea was Christmas Day. There were nice turkey dinners prepared for the troops. The unfortunate part, most of the ship was seasick. Very few of them got eaten that day, so it was not a very pleasant Christmas. I was not really sick, but I got sick to my stomach once just being in that environment. So it was kind of messy, kind of smelly, and got over it for the most part. Most of us had never been at sea before. After a couple days, everything settled down for the most part. It took us 18 days, direct shipment from Fort Lewis, Washington to Incheon, South Korea.
I went to Korea I flew to Korea. I went, after basic training, I went to San Antonio, Texas, and then from there, went home for 30 days, caught a plane in Philadelphia, and I wasn't home for the next 2 years. They just flew me right over to Korea.
By ship, the General William S. Wiggle. I don't know how long it took, but I was sick the whole way there. Because if you got below deck, it just stunk and there was too much throw up down there. You got above ship, you're looking up at the thing and it's going like that. So it was just constant seasick the whole way.
How long were you?
When my final orders came down to move out to Korea, I had to travel to Travis Air Force Base in California, where I boarded I believe it was a DC-9 with some 350 other individuals, and we flew to Korea.
I was 18 years old then, didn't know any difference, but when the Korean War started, I was in Fort Hood, Texas in the 2nd Armored Division, and when the war started in June, we were shipped to Japan in July. We were there 1 week, and then we were sent to what they call the Pusan Perimeter in Korea. After that, they moved us up to another town called Daegu. We guarded the perimeter there, and then after the North Koreans started moving backwards, we went all the way up to a place called Wonsan. And there, they recalled us, go back to Pusan. We were put on ships, and we went around to a place called Incheon for our landing there. And we landed with the 1st Marine Division. The 1st Marine Division went to Seoul. We went up the central part of Korea, which is all mountains. We got over to a place called Wonsan. Then they sent us back to Pusan again. We kept going back and forth over there, but we moved so fast. I was in the artillery, and we were ahead of the infantry most of the time. That's how fast we moved. So after Wonsan, the North Koreans started moving back to North Korea, and we followed them all the way to the Yellow River, which is the border between them and China, and we were there for a while. We were the only American outfit to reach the Yellow River, the 17th Regimental Combat Team. After we were told to move back, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know the Chinese were in the war. We went down to a place called the Chosin Reservoir. That's where all the trouble started. The Marines were there, they were having a bad time. So we were lucky, we got through. They had about 5 Chinese divisions against 2 American divisions there. We went to a place called Hongdam. That's where everybody was supposed to meet. We were put on ships, sent back to Pusan, and then we started back up again to the 38th parallel, and that's where we stopped. That was it. We stayed there for a while, and then, you know, they went to the peace talks and everything. So I was sent home after that, and I was discharged, but I re-enlisted. So I had 20 years in the service. And that's my life story of Korea.
On a boat. Then I went to Washington, San Francisco, and it took about 2.5 weeks.
I was shipped to Germany, to Bremerhaven. I was only a young kid. I spent my Christmas on the bottom of the boat.
went to church there. They had a little preacher there. And I went to Germany and I would join with the constabulary, which was a very elite outfit. Very, very elite. Really top notch. And that was a tank troop. It was a tank outfit. M46, the biggest tanks they had, with a 90mm tank on it. Gun on it, rather. And I went to school to learn how to operate it. And fired in 90, went on maneuvers to Grafenwohr, which was very well known in Germany. And after the Berlin Wall was done with, they chased us out of there. Instead of 5 men to a tank, they only had 3 men to a tank. And of course, propaganda was they were up to full strength, but they weren't. So we were shipped back, and I was sent to Fort Benning, Georgia, with an ordnance outfit, 835. And I spent my time with there. And then the Korean War broke out. And my enlistment was going to be up in another month and a half. So they called me in the office to see if I wanted to enlist and go with them. And when I went into the office, I forgot to take my hat off. And I was a good soldier. And I forgot to take my hat off real quick. And the first sergeant reamed me out. Well, that made me say no right then and there when I went in to see the lieutenant. He asked me to enlist for another year and go. And I said, no, sir. So the outfit flew out, the ordnance outfit flew out the next day. And I went down to another outfit, and all I found out was cutting grass. And I said, nah, this ain't for me. The Truman year was put on me. So now I said I got to do something. Now I'm going to do another year of cutting grass, so I volunteered to go over. Now my MOS is for a tank, and I fired a 90mm. I was a tank commander. Not knowing where I'm going to go, I volunteered to go over, and I figured by the time I got there, it was going to be time to come back again. And they said it was going to be a short war, but it wasn't. So anyway, oh boy. So what I did was, the orderly was going down to the main post to turn in the roster every morning, which he does. And a friend of mine, his name was Donald E. Bates. He went home to get married. And when the orderly walked by, I said to this guy, put Donald Bates and me in for overseas duty. Now Donald Bates is home getting married. I put him in for overseas duty. 2 days later, they came back and said, you and Donald's going overseas. You're now with the 66th Army Postal Unit, which they needed 20 men to make up a unit to go. And so, but he didn't have to go because he just came back from Japan. He spent 3 years over there. And he didn't have to go, and I told him, I said, Donald, you don't have to go. Tell the man you just came from overseas. But being a good soldier, he had his orders, and he went. And when I told him what I did, he said, if that's true, he said, I'll shoot you. Which he had every right to do, because here we are in Fort Benning, Georgia, at the train station, waiting to get on the train, and his wife is 30 yards away from us. She's a beautiful girl. He just came with her. He had an apartment, everything ready to go. And he's standing with me, and I said, look, don't stand here with me. Go over with your wife. You just got married a week ago. I said, stay with her until the train pulls out. Well, anyway, we went overseas together, and we came back, and we kept in contact. I found out where he lived, and I think it was, I'll think of where it was. But anyway, we were still in touch, but I think he went blind and his wife died, and that was it.
All right. How did you get to Korea?
Took the train out of Fort Benning, Georgia, made a stop at Chicago for 1 hour, went up through North Dakota, South Dakota to Seattle, Washington. Took the boat out of there, went to Korea, went to Japan, rather. Stayed 2 weeks in Japan, never allowed out to go to town except one day. Took an airplane to Kimpo, and we went over to K9 Kimpo, and I stayed there.